So my name is Franceen Neufeld, and I'm the author of Suffering Eyes, A Chronicle of Awakening. And I'm going to tell you the story of how Suffering Eyes, A Chronicle of Awakening came to be. I call it Lies I Told Myself. Can you hear me? The funny thing about lying to ourselves is that we don't realize that's what we're doing until we stop doing it, until we wake up. So this Chronicle of my Awakening began in Portugal in the spring of 2003. For as long as I can remember, I've always considered myself to be an animal lover. But that day, I was parked in my car behind a truck, and it was a butcher truck, and the back doors flung open, and row upon row of carcasses were hanging there. And in that moment, I was shattered by a simple, obvious truth that had somehow escaped me for nearly 50 years. If I loved someone, I would never do that to them. My love for these animals had been a lie. I had paid someone else to kill them, and I was responsible for their deaths as surely as if I had slit their throats myself. All my animal-loving years, I'd been lying to myself about what love looks like. As I began writing my book, I remembered back to an event from my children's childhood that captured this. It was in writing this reflection that I came to understand how deep that lie ran. It's appropriately called We Lied. We lied to the lamb, not with words. No words passed between us about what was coming, but with gentle hands caressing and tender arms embracing, we assured this helpless baby that we were on his side. I wonder where his mother was, how she felt when her sweet little child was taken away. But now we stood in for her, feeding her little one with a bottle, guarding, protecting, nurturing. Helpless and alone without his mother, he now depended upon us, trusted us. We embraced the little orphan, cared for him tenderly, and then slit his throat. We lied to you, little helpless one. The real message was between the lines, between our teeth, as our forked tongues lusted to steal from you. This is the heart of our darkness. The treachery of everything we do to all these beings. Always it is the same. We lie, and we lie, and we steal, as if it doesn't matter what that does to them or to our own souls. There are times when my own species shames me until I can no longer bear it. I cannot bear that I belong to this faithless race, so well rehearsed in our treachery that we no longer see through our own act. We fool ourselves as much as we fool our prey, so that one and all, they follow us meekly to the bloodied hell we have prepared for them. We steal their milk, we steal their eggs, we steal their babies, and then when they have nothing left to give us, we steal their life and watch it drip slowly from their eyes. And in our own eyes, we see ourselves as just and honorable and compassionate all the same. And so I started loving animals enough to stop eating them, but then I began telling myself another lie. I told myself that it was enough that I'd become vegan. I believed that I loved animals so much that I couldn't bear to think about what people were doing to them, that it was too painful, that I had to try to forget. But this wasn't just a lie, it was also an impossibility, because it was impossible now for me to forget the suffering, because my new eyes saw it everywhere. I saw it in the news, on the plates of those I love, down grocery store aisles. And it was a lie, because love doesn't look like that either. It doesn't turn away from the suffering of loved ones. And if there's anything it can do to alleviate that suffering, it will do it, whatever the cost. And as that lie too began to crumble, I began to be afraid. It suddenly dawned on me that I knew what I'd be able to do. And the thought of it terrified me, because it would mean turning towards the suffering instead of away from it. It would mean facing my memories, paying attention to every news item, witnessing horrors I was desperate to protect myself from. I didn't know if I could survive doing this one thing I knew I could do. This next reflection captures my struggle against writing this book. It's called beginning somewhere. Put it off, cram it down, cover it up, turn aside, close my eyes, rot away from the inside out. Do anything but see, do anything but think, do anything but know. But I do know. A chicken is decapitated by an automated feeding cart, and I am wrenched out of the disintegrating shelter of my own world and flung irretrievably into helplessness of hers. I have seen and heard things that ought not to be. Love for the suffering ones has burst my heart open, and my grief has spilled out everywhere. I now have no way back to my personal garden of innocence and comfort without bringing them with me. Their suffering has become my suffering, their peace my peace. I know no other way to love. Suffering eyes speak to me. I will no longer abandon them. Whatever it costs me, I will find words for their agony, words strong enough to move the oppressors to mercy, words powerful enough to rescue those I love. And so I began to walk forward into the pain without worrying anymore what it would do to me. Every day, I let myself descend as deeply as I could into one particular event from my personal experience or from the news and information I was now letting myself bear witness to. On April 13th, 2012, I began a blog and posted one reflection every day. On June 3rd, I knew it was done. I'd said what I needed to say. 3 months later, my son Calvin and I began editing Suffering Eyes, and I began writing a second part of the book, which I called Roots and Branches, because it traces the roots out of which each reflection grew and explores the branches that extend out from them. During the 3 months between finishing the blog and beginning to turn it into a book, my mother passed away after years of suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Shortly before she died, she gave me a great gift. It had taken me many years to extricate myself from the lies that I'd been telling myself about love, but the purest, finest truth about love came to me as a simple gift from my mom. This is a reflection I wrote called All I Want. My mom has been leaving me little by little. Fog surrounds her now and growing darkness. She moves in her solitary awareness without guideposts, without something solid to hold on to. Pain comes to her through the mist, desperate and sad, without words to bring her the help she needs. But one day, the sea of her bewilderment parted for a moment as a single urgent longing rose up from some place deep within her, her one wish, her last clear message for me, her only daughter. All I want is for you to be happy. My heart pains at the sound of it, at the essential motherness of it, that one thing that every mother desperately wants for her every child. Some say the last thing to go is hearing, but the deepest thing that stays with us is music. But since I heard those words, I think that for anyone who loves, this is the deepest and most enduring thing, whether words remain to bring that longing to light or not. I just want you to be happy. If we all said that, and if we meant it as a mother would for every one of this earth's little children, maybe I could taste a measure of what my mother wants for me. Since writing those words, I have found a measure of happiness. The final lie that I had to confront as I was writing this book, the most persistent one, was that awakening to the enormity of animal suffering meant that I could never be happy again. Writing Suffering Eyes taught me that happiness can never be found by taking refuge in lies, by turning away from the suffering of loved ones, by hardening our hearts against them. But along the way I learned something else as well. I began to be surprised by the deep happiness that comes in letting love do its work in us and through us. Love longs for the well-being of those it loves. And in the orientation of our lives toward rescue and healing, there is grief, yes, but there is also joy. It's my hope that Suffering Eyes will be a companion and support for anyone who shares this longing.
I'm going to scoot this over a little because I'm having a horse. So I hope you all can hear me. Pretty hard to follow Franceen, I have to admit.